And we're live. It is Monday, September 16th, 2024, 6 p.m. in Washington. And, we got a lot to talk about. The former president, has said that he hates Taylor Swift. And Taylor Swift has endorsed Kamala Harris. And two of Taylor Swift's concerts in Europe were disrupted by threats of ISIS attack. And all of Washington is chattering about it. So I thought it was time to have a serious conversation about Taylor Swift, Donald Trump, ISIS, all the people who really hate Taylor Swift. I don't understand the whole hating Taylor Swift thing, but people really seem to hate her who hate her. And then there's the, like 40 million people, who seem to want to go to her concerts. And so there's just a whole lot going on with the whole Taylor Swift and politics thing. And so I thought, who do I want to have a conversation with about Donald Trump and Taylor Swift? And there were really only two answers to that question, one of whom is my colleague Anna Bauer, and the other of whom I can't really name because, works in the government. And so we're going to talk to Anna Bauer about all of this. Anna Bauer is a very serious Swiftie, as you can tell from her shirt. And she follows the stuff with a sense of detail that, yesterday, or maybe it was this morning, I thought I'd heard something that was, I'm not even going to repeat it because I don't repeat disinformation. And so I texted it to Anna, and the moment Anna sent me back, really, ? I knew that it must be false, because if it were true, she would have known it before I did. So that's the level of detail. And we're going to go into everything. But before we do, Anna, I have to just ask you about the shirt you are wearing not currently, but in the photograph for today's episode. You are wearing a shirt covered in cats. And this raises, are you serious about dogs and dog shirt question that I think I just need to give you a chance to address. So we aren't allowed to have fun anymore. We are allowed to have Anna Bauer come on and shoot the shit about Taylor Swift and Donald Trump, and start by defending herself for wearing a cat shirt.
Yeah, I need to set the record straight, folks. I am, in fact, a dog person, and very pro dog shirt, by the way. But Taylor Swift, that was the reputation. Good one today. I like that type of dog.
Yeah, it's a Shiba Inu shirt.
Taylor Swift is known to be a cat person, hence the
childless one.
Signing her statement endorsing Kamala Harris with childless Catwoman. And she had, during the Reputation tour, which was also like a lot of themes around snakes, which maybe at some point I'll explain to you, Ben. There's a lot of Taylor lore going on here with the animals, but the cats are important because she's had cats for a long time. One of her cats' name is Olivia Benson, named after the SVU character, the cop. And then there's another one named Benjamin Button. And then there's another one named Meredith. So she loves her cats. And she had a line in one of her songs during the Reputation tour that is called, I Guess I'll Just Stumble on Home to My Cats Alone. and so, yeah, there's me at the Reputation tour. And And the reason that we dressed up the way that we did is because at the time, Taylor, like, she was very famous, but she was kind of not as famous as she is now. And she did a bunch of stuff where, like, her mom and dad would go to the concerts. And if they saw a group of girls wearing outfits that they thought were, like, really funny or cute, you'd sometimes get invited to go backstage to do, like, a meet and greet with Taylor Swift. And so my sisters and I, every time that we would go to one of the concerts, we would, like, really go all out and get dressed up.
And did you ever get, did this strategy ever work?
No, it did not work, but we did at this concert. One of my sisters, the two of us were walking to the bathroom mid-concert, and we met Taylor's dad. And he gave us guitar picks, which I still don't even know where they are, which I should find them. But he gave us little guitar picks of hers. So that was
That's
very
pretty
nice.
good. That's worth wearing a cat.
Yeah, so I met Scott Swift, but did not meet Taylor Swift.
And just to be clear, do you, in retrospect, have any guilt about wearing a cat shirt?
Well, no, because I like cats too. Like, I don't know why I would. I think it's hilarious now that the rhetoric is around, childless cat ladies.
Right, that you guys actually dressed up as cat ladies.
We made posters too that said the lyric, "I guess I'll just stumble on home to my cats alone."
Wow.
So yeah, we were like that was the year we really thought we were going to meet Taylor Swift, but we didn't.
And what year was that?
2018, I think.
Wow. And
yeah,
but you had no idea when you did this that it wasn't like that you believed that 8 years later or 6 years later, excuse me, J.D. Vance would be talking about how childless cat ladies were ruling the world, and Taylor Swift would be signing a presidential endorsement, childless cat ladies. You didn't have a vision of that.
No, I had no vision. I also, honestly, if you told me then that Taylor would be as, like, she is in what people have called her imperial era, because she is so big that it is like she is an empire. And at the time, the Reputation tour was like, I mean, we got like, look, we're in the pit there, and we got those tickets for like $100 or something. Like, it was not, it was.
So what would it cost? What would it cost to get tickets now?
Oh, right now, I was just looking on StubHub because I really wanted to go to the Eras tour for her remaining concerts. Guess how much the cheap seats are, Ben? Like, I'm talking like nosebleed, obstructed view.
Hmm.
It's like over $2,000 for a ticket.
I went to a Brahms violin concert yesterday, and it was free.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that it was a great concert too, but I'm just trying to give you an example of the level of fame that she is at now is just crazy compared to the Reputation tour. She actually had like it wasn't cool to like Taylor Swift at the time because she had this whole like PR crisis. That's one reason why the snakes were relevant, because after her album 1989, she got really famous. And then it was like the fall of House Swift because Kim and Kanye attacked her and like deceptively edited this phone call and made it look like she was saying something she wasn't. And then she was just like, I don't know, out in the press gallivanting with different men. And I guess for some reason people disapproved of that. So with this album, she really leaned into like, okay, I'm going to be the bad guy. And honestly, it's one of my favorite albums because it's so avant-garde and kind of just like she's really trying to lean into this like character of being kind of, if you want me to be the mean girl, like I'm going to be the mean girl who's just like a man eater who's out to get revenge. So it was a great concert. And it wasn't cool to like Taylor Swift then, but we had a great time.
And it's not cool to wear cat shirts now.
It's not. I mean, I'm still a dog person, but it is fun to have these pictures.
No, it's great. It's
a childless cat lady.
It's great. And it's so great that I'm even willing to display a cat shirt on DogShirtTV. All right. Let's turn to the subject at hand. Donald Trump has tweeted, "I hate Taylor Swift." or not tweeted, bleated, whatever he does now. And it just seems to me ill-advised if you have a gender gap problem to declare war on Taylor Swift's demographic, which I think, loosely speaking, can be described as white women under 40, of whom there are a lot. So
yeah, and I want to be clear for listeners who maybe don't quite understand. I think there's a lot of misconceptions. People, I keep hearing them say, especially like older men who are not quite Taylor Swift fans. I continually see them describe Taylor Swift fans as being like 12-year-olds, which there's a lot of 12-year-old Taylor Swift fans, but also I would say the most like diehard dedicated Taylor Swift fans are like the women who grew up kind of around Taylor Swift's age, maybe a few years older, maybe a few years younger, who kind of grew up listening to Taylor Swift. And they're now, you know, in their maybe late 20s to late 30s, like that kind of range.
And do you have the impression, which I have, that above that age demographic, there's kind of a gap, and then there's
the older women, yes.
And then there's the older people, some of them men, some of them women, who had daughters in that demographic, and that there was a sort of contagion of the fandom between, you know, 14-year-olds and their parents. And so there's this older demographic that's kind of into her as a matter of contagion from having daughters in the core demographic.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, my mom is a Taylor Swift fan. I think it's the only concert she's been to in the past like 2 decades was a Taylor Swift concert. And she like went to, like, we all together went to see the Eras Tour movie when it came out. She was like singing along to all the songs. All of her friends are big Taylor Swift fans. And so I think that it's definitely, and I think also too, some men who have daughters or family members who are Taylor Swift fans also kind of got, I mean, not to the same extent that maybe the moms were, but got into it for sure.
I do have the impression, like, every man I know who is an unembarrassed Swiftie has a daughter. Like, yeah. I do have the impression that it's something that there's a certain group of men who, you know, who find that their daughters brought home this music and they liked it, and maybe they first liked it because they pretended to, because it made their daughters happy, but then they kind of fell in love with it. And I do have a sense that that's part of the demographic. So,
I think that's right. I also think, though, there's like a lot of like guys who I know who are around my age. Like, again, I think that same demographic from late 20s to like late 30s, especially if it's like a guy who's really into music. I think that, and I know that that sounds counterintuitive to people who think Taylor Swift is just like a pop star, but she's also seen as like a very serious musician. And so I think that like a lot of guys who see themselves as people who are really into music, they've like absorbed the work and appreciated it as well.
So, all right, let's talk about the positive political side, if you're the Republican presidential nominee, of declaring war on Taylor Swift. I can't think of it. And the question is, can you? Like, who's the voter who you're speaking to when you put out, I hate Taylor Swift? She's got like 200 million followers, 300 million. It's like a crazy number. What, like, who are you going for there?
I mean, I tried to think about this. I think maybe it is the only demographic that I can think of that it would appeal to is kind of like what I can only describe as like the incel demographic. Like the like maybe men who have some like pent up resentment against women, and who think that Taylor Swift is, you know, this trivial pop star that they despise, and there's things about her that, you know, this gives them permission to kind of overtly hate her, and so they like that maybe. But like, I truly, honestly, can't, other than that, think of who this appeals to.
I mean, I do think there's a world of people who kind of have contempt for Taylor Swift as a, you know, mere pop star, as you say, and as kind of trivial. But they're not voting on that basis, right? It's not
Right,
like
and that's
like
why
I like
it's weird.
right. They're not. It's not like anyone's saying, well, I couldn't vote for anybody who's pro Taylor Swift. So it's like the most anti Taylor Swift candidate is what I'm looking for. I assume there's only two explanations for this. Um, and let's do the intellectually, the one that I think is less likely, but would credit it with more thought, which is that he is trying to present himself as like he's already lost by dint of the endorsement anybody who's going to vote on the bait or be enthused by the Taylor Swift endorsement. So that's already gone. So what he's going to get is that it'll energize his people because he's standing against the culture, right? And the one thing that the whole Trump coalition has in common is this sense of grievance at the culture. You know, she is emblematic of modern American popular culture right now. So you say, I stand against Taylor Swift. It's a way of saying I stand against kind of everything that the culture spews out, you know, and what do you think?
No, I mean, it just doesn't really make, I mean, I understand what you're saying. It still just doesn't make any sense. I mean, she's quite literally the America's equivalent, like Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, which, yes, I actually do think maybe Travis Kelce, there's more of a point there because they call him Mr. Pfizer, whatever, you know, they have, he, you know, support, has done, you know, education around getting vaccinated and that kind of thing. And so even before they were together, there was like a lot of, you know, people being like, oh, Travis Kelce is just a liberal, you know, representation of like
Right, the
liberalism.
NFL code's left.
Yeah. But like, it's like,
not in my world, but
these two people are the closest that America has to royalty. I mean, they are America's sweethearts. Like
what do
they,
you mean? We have what's her name? The
oh, Meghan Markle.
yeah, we have Meghan Markle and we have
Yeah,
former royalty.
they're not the same, but like, because they're half, it's like still half British, you know what I mean? So it's like they're still like, we associate them with being British monarchy.
Right.
Yeah.
We have leftover monarchy.
So I think that it's just totally nuts to me if the thinking is, oh, these two people are like, I mean, Taylor Swift in particular is representative of like everything that's wrong with like leftist celebrity culture, when it's like she's never really been like, yeah, she endorsed Biden in 2020, but she's honestly, most of her career has been her being criticized for not being more involved in politics.
And she comes out of the country movement, which, if anything, is kind of, you know, thought of politically in the sort of the other side.
Yeah, I mean, look, the first Taylor Swift concert that I went to was when she opened for Rascal Flatts at an amphitheater in Georgia. And like, I mean, all of my friends that I grew up with in a very conservative area, you know, they're all Taylor Swift fans. Like they go, I've been seeing on Instagram, like everyone going to the concerts or going to the movie and that kind of thing. Like she has a very broad range of political ideology in terms of her fan base. And so I just don't really see this. And even if you looked on Truth Social, whenever he came out with the I Hate Taylor Swift statement, people were responding to him being like, please don't do this. This is so unnecessary. This is just going to make things worse. And then like people like Tomi Lahren, who, you know, is very conservative. She was on Twitter saying like, oh, why did he do this? This was such a bad idea. But I do have.
Wow, I always thought Tomi Lahren was dumb as a rock, but that shows wisdom.
Yeah. Well, but I do have a thought about what the strategy was, and I don't know if you are thinking the same thing because I think
no. My next leap was there was no strategy. He just lashed out because she endorsed the other side, hit him when he was down. So if there's another strategic possibility, let's consider that before we go to the Occam's razor explanation.
I do think that that's probably the most likely explanation because he's not exactly a man known for impulse control. But I think the third explanation could be, yeah, it's not great in terms of getting anyone to vote for you, but it's really good as a method of distraction because you know it's going to make immediate, like, kind of mindless media storm around it. And this is coming off of a week where he did terrible at the debate. They had all of the stuff going on with JD Vance. I think it was that morning, JD Vance was like saying we create stories about people eating cats if we need to. That statement that he made, you know.
By the way, do you want some cat? I have some in the kitchen if you happen to want any.
I'm good, thanks, Ben.
Dog, wild,
I prefer geese, actually.
Goose?
Geese.
Yeah. Okay. As I said to Mike Pesca the other night on, I actually, you know, it's all a blood libel. It's terrible that they're saying this, but I have no problem with migrants or native-born Americans eating geese in urban settings. The geese are totally out of control here. The deer are totally out of control. So anyone who wants to have venison or goose in the Washington, D.C. area should just have at it. We shouldn't have a problem with that. So my answer to J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, is you're lying. They're not eating geese. But if they were, like, I would say have some venison too.
Okay, well.
Meanwhile, back on planet Earth, you were saying something.
All the time, but like I'm sure that my sister and her husband have like a bunch of like frozen deer meat in there.
Right, but they don't. But that's my point: is when they do it, nobody says boo. Yeah. But you do that in a city, and people like, oh my God, they're eating the like. We have a lot of deer wandering around my neighborhood. Rabbits too. People should eat them.
Meanwhile, why aren't they concerned about RFK Jr. with the bear?
Exactly. Right. Like, right. So I just think, you know, there's an angle on this eating cat story that, like, the problem is not that you're eating a cat, though I don't actually think cat. The problem is that it's somebody's pet. And if it were true, that would be a problem. But like, we actually hunt meat in this country quite a bit. I don't have a problem with it when, you know, the folks you grew up with do it. And I don't have a problem with it if hypothetically somebody wanted to safely capture and slaughter some of the deer that are running around my neighborhood eating all the plants. So big tangent. Back to Taylor Swift.
The point is that I think that they had all of this kind of like bad press that was going on. Trump, he knows how the media works. He knows that he can just say, I hate Taylor Swift, ! And all of a sudden that's going to be what people are talking about. Not, you know,
And is
how
it what people are talking about other than us?
for at least a day, people. Well, then but then the thing happened with the alleged assassination attempt, and so that kind of threw things a little bit, you know. But like, I think that there were a few hours of a media cycle there where it very much was like, you know, reporters were asking about it. Like, the Harris campaign came out with a whole Taylor Swift themed statement about it. I mean, it was creating, at least for a bit, a distraction.
So, do you think that that is the actual explanation? He's like, lean into the bad news and make it, or do you think that the real explanation is somebody wasn't nice to him and he lashes out 100% of the time when people above a certain profile do something mean?
No, I think that it absolutely is the case. I think it probably is to him. It's, you know, he already has an ego, and then, you know, this is a woman, this is a young woman. She's much more famous than he is, even, you know, like I think that there's a lot of things there. I mean, he's talked about her before too. Like he's said things about her in previous years that, you know, she's come up a number of times. He also had that whole thing where when she wasn't endorsed, she had not endorsed anyone yet. And he, what was it that he did? Oh, he posted those fake AI photos on his site that kind of made it look like a bunch of Swifties for Trump thing. And it made it sound as though she'd endorsed him. So clearly he was happy with her then, as long as he was able to portray it as though she in some way, you know, had was supporting him. But I think that it's very much just probably there was not really a whole lot of thought to this other than he just wanted everyone to know that he hates Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I suspect that the explanation of it is pure id, that he feels something and he is actually, you know, though a pathological liar, entirely emotionally transparent always. And that the best way to read that bleat is as a simple expression of what he's feeling. And, you know, she hit him when he was down in about the most effective way. It's about the most effective political endorsement I've ever seen, at least by a celebrity. I mean, the Cheney endorsement is actually more important from a, you know, from a political point of view. But and the timing of it was exquisite. You know, and so, you know, she gets Kamala Harris. I believe that's the first time we've mentioned her name today, or just destroys Trump and feasts on his flesh in the debate. And then in the moments after, while everyone's talking about that, Taylor Swift drops this endorsement that is actually, I mean, look, I'm sure she has all kinds of professional PR help and all that, but that is a great statement. And
her PR woman is named Tree Payne, so shout out to Tree Payne for
Tree Payne,
good statement.
You know, despite my repeated efforts to get Taylor to come on in lieu of fun, and they never quite panned out. So Tree Payne, if you're watching, come on, get on it. We have, you know, 24 viewers on YouTube right now, and this is the kind of audience that Taylor should be talking to. Okay, so like I think she actually wounded him, and which is what I actually so admire about her is the ability, and I say that as somebody who's never really spent any time with her music, but I've watched her as a cultural phenomenon, and she very consistently gets under the skin of of the non-democratic forces in this country. And I have a shitload of time for that, just as a, and Mike Pesca was on the other night and we were talking about Megyn Kelly's reaction to the endorsement. Megyn Kelly, I have never thought of as a deranged person, though her politics are obviously different from mine. Her reaction to this was completely deranged. And I am curious so it's not just Trump that she's getting to. What is it about her that drives people like Megyn Kelly, like Rich Lowry, somebody Shannon mentions in the chat quite rightly? They sound like insane people. And they're talking about an American citizen exercising her constitutional rights to say, she didn't even tell people who to vote for. She just said, vote, think about the issues that are important to you, and here's who I'm voting for and why. And why does this drive people insane in the way that it does? She didn't, like Hulk Hogan did, rip off her shirt at the Democratic convention, right? There are people who are behaving in a really, celebrities who are behaving in a really undignified, I think, inappropriate fashion. He's allowed to do what he wants. I'm not telling him not to do, but it isn't Taylor Swift.
Oh, Ben, I mean, I saw there's a prominent figure within the Georgia Republican Party that I follow on Twitter who, when this news came out, she was posting about, what we do with things that are, like, she was discussing Taylor Swift and how sometimes Taylor Swift has had kind of imagery at her concerts that invoke the kind of themes or imagery of a witches kind of a group of women who are like witches. And she was calling to basically saying we should all burn our Taylor Swift merchandise because this is what we do with things like Taylor that are witchy. And I mean, it was very like, there's just so much there to unpack in terms of like wanting to burn women at the stake who you feel like you can't control. And I think that honestly that's kind of what it comes down to, is that there is within conservative circles, if you think about it, within there's a type of ideology that believes that Taylor Swift is kind of the all-American woman. She's this like white lady with blonde hair who's like almost 6 feet tall, who's very thin and beautiful, and has this all-American football star player. She sings since she was a country artist, she's been singing songs about, like her relationships with men and kind of, all this stuff. And there's this kind of sense that I think that a lot of conservatives have that she should be on our team. And it's the lack of being able to control her political thinkings or political leanings that just so frustrates people who are on the right who are mad about this. Does that make sense? Is that a good theory or bad theory?
I think it's it's certainly a plausible theory. I want to start with the fact that, I do not know her career the way you do. I am just struck by the fact that her work, as I understand it, is almost entirely apolitical, to the point that when she's not like, the Dixie Chicks who are out there in concerts making political statements. Not that I have a problem with that, right? But with that, you could really understand, okay, they were out there criticizing George W. Bush. People who like George W. Bush took offense. And people don't like it when the performing artists that they most identify with culturally turn out to have politics that are different from theirs, because then they don't feel represented. So that I totally understand. By the way, and there is a strong element of sexism to that as well, because nobody the Chris Christies of the world never demanded political loyalty from the Bruce Springsteens of the world, right? And so there was this idea, if you're and Chris Christie, to be fair, is a larger is a more ecumenical mind than the people who were going after the Dixie Chicks. But he idolized Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen hated his politics. Chris Christie didn't renounce his fandom of Bruce Springsteen, right? He just said, okay, we'll agree to disagree about that, and whatever. He was reasonably classy about it. There's something going on in the Taylor Swift context that is well beyond that, which is she's not fundamentally a political, right? She's like, her work is not particularly political, except in the sense that you just identified, which is that she makes her own choices romantically. She writes songs about them, and she's not towing a kind of, I hate the term, but she's not a trad wife, right? She's doing her own thing, and there's this implication that she sends out that she doesn't necessarily need a perfectly traditional life. And then she has, on at least 3 occasions that I'm aware of, endorsed Democrats. One was Joe Biden last time. She negatively endorsed Marsha Blackburn, her home state senator, not to any great effect. And now this. Is there more that she's done that's political that should cause the, when the J.D. Vances of the world identify their witches, to cause her to be in that category, or is that really it?
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of it. She also has a documentary film that was produced and released on Netflix that is called Miss Americana, and it is about her journey to kind of being more politically vocal, and basically one of the issues that she mentioned in her statement endorsing Kamala Harris, and then also that she was a big point in this film, was that as an entertainer, she, became more and more aware of kind of, there were a lot of people around her in the industry, and then she became very close friends with a lot of people who were LGBT, who identified as LGBTQ, and she felt like that was a big, I think, kind of reason that she ended up becoming more vocal, and she ended up writing, I think, one of her only overtly political songs is this song called You Need to Calm Down, which I just realized I forgot to put on the playlist that I made. That is the I Hate Taylor Swift playlist. But it is a song that is about...
Which you should share in the chat.
Yes, I should share. Oh, I didn't even know that there was a chat. Oh, right. Okay. I forgot to put this on the playlist, but it's a song called You Need to Calm Down that is about basically her kind of saying to people who are anti-gay rights, like, you just need to calm down and get over yourself, because people are just people, and they're gonna, kind of love whoever they love, whatever. She had a previous kind of allusion to her interest in LGBTQ rights in a song called Welcome to New York, in which she talks about boys being with boys and girls being with girls. And it was kind of the first time she'd ever done anything that was Taylor Swift might have political views about something. So it was kind of a slow progression in terms of her being more vocal about her political stances. But I think that the two things that I'm aware of that she's talked a lot about are things like she never quite describes it as reproductive rights. She always describes it in the way that she did in her statement, but she says things like a woman's right to do what she would like with her own body, and then also LGBTQ stuff. So I think those are her two of her key issues. But other than that, she has not been super political, and always very, very careful about it.
And what do you ascribe the care to? Is it just she's got a very large, very politically diverse fan base, and she doesn't want to offend people unnecessarily? Is it that she's that she's seen what happened to other people who became more political? Is it that she's maybe doesn't think about politics that much? What do you take to be the reason why she guards her views as carefully as she does?
So look, I don't know the real reason, but I think that there's 3 different reasons. So one is there's a business interest in her being really careful about, I think that especially for a long time, based on the documentary that she released that's on Netflix, I think that her dad, who is also one of her close business associates, was very anti her saying anything publicly about her political views. His idea of, kind of the industry and all that was just that singers should just sing and not say anything. And then, it wasn't until basically Trump got elected and she kind of talks about all those things that I just discussed that she became a little bit more willing to discuss it. But I think psychologically what she has talked about is she grew up in a town and in a kind of gendered environment in which she felt like she just needed to be very nice, and that she didn't want, her biggest fear was that people would not like her. And it didn't matter if it was about, what it was about, but just the very idea of people not liking her was just something that was a major fear. And so she was concerned, that coming out with a political stance would, kind of cause people to dislike her or whatever. I think there's also, going along with that, the backlash that women artists especially get. You mentioned the Dixie Chicks. That's kind of a career thing, but also can be a safety thing. And then that brings me to the third point, which is especially recently, maybe not so much in her previous, when her career was, like she was extremely popular, but not as popular. I mean, she is like I said, American royalty, like one person embodying a nation state, basically. And I think that we've seen from what happened in Vienna, where her concerts were called off because of a planned ISIS terror attack. She released a statement saying basically that if there's anything that would endanger her fans, she's going to choose to just not speak about it. She was talking about, at the time, she wasn't able to say anything publicly about the choice to cancel the concerts, but it's a very Swiftian type of move to not say anything because she's worried about her fans and their safety, and then also her own safety. I mean, I know that she's had stalkers who have broken into her apartment. She's had all kinds of stuff. And especially with her tour continuing, and her tour is like the biggest thing. Like if you were a terrorist organization looking to attack a concert, which is something that we've seen in previous years, Ariana Grande in, I believe it was Manchester, we've seen examples of this. The French,
the Paris,
the Paris, yeah. So there's a lot of examples of this. And like the Eras Tour I'm sure that the security situation is incredibly scary, and that it's something she's probably worried about in terms of the safety of her fans. And so I think that the carefulness is also related to not wanting to endanger people unnecessarily.
All right. So if you were the Donald Trump campaign, presumably no one with other than Donald Trump himself approved that tweet on the theory that, like, why would you do that? What would you be most concerned about as, Donald Trump has now declared war on Swift Nation? What's the, what's the first act in the war? What happens?
Okay, so the thing I would be most concerned about is there's a few different things, because I actually don't think that the power of Taylor Swift is that she's going to convert a bunch of people from, oh, I was going to vote for Trump, but now I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. I just don't think that is how celebrity endorsements work. But I do think
there also just aren't that many undecided voters.
Yes, right. So, but I think there's a few things. One is that I think, there's, a mobilization kind of thing that you're worried about. Swifties are like the most, look, I just told you to go to this concert. I spent like hours making like little posters that said, I guess I'll just stumble on home to my cats alone. Like people going to the Eras Tour make these elaborate costumes. People they're the most kind of active, like whenever Swifties are mobilized, I mean, they are like really mobilized. And I can see this kind of provoking a lot of Swifties to just go and do the canvassing that maybe they wouldn't have done otherwise.
But that's really interesting. Are these the kind of people who would be doing that anyway? Or is this sort of like, well, I was gonna, spend all my time making an outfit for the Eras Tour, but because Donald Trump tweeted that he hates Taylor Swift, I'm going to use that time to canvass for Kamala Harris.
I think they're still probably spending a ton of time making their Eras Tour costumes, but I think that it's the kind of thing where a lot of the Taylor fandom is very it's very connected and close, in the sense that there's all these random internet people who just kind of will get together and they don't even know each other. And it's it's hard to describe, but it makes for good political mobilization if you can make it translate. And I think that this is more of a kind of pushing people towards oh, you were just friends with these people because you had Taylor Swift in common, but then now they're inviting you to go and knock on doors. So there's kind of that marginal kind of it might push people to be more active thing. But I think one of the big concerns you're worried about if you're the Trump campaign is the actually getting people to the polls and getting people registered to vote who otherwise maybe wouldn't have gone to vote or registered to vote. Taylor Swift has how many millions of Instagram followers? And from that one link that she did to register people to vote, there were 300,000 visits just from that. And you need to have someone who can do the stats on it to see how that actually translates and all that. So it's kind of speculative right now, but I do think that there's this kind of turnout thing. And what you're really concerned about is if Taylor Swift decides to actually do things she hasn't done before, which are actually throw a concert or tell people at her concerts, you got to go vote. Or, she's going back on tour in at least 3 places in the United States where people are traveling from all over, like tens of thousands of people, more people than Donald Trump will ever draw to a rally. And she's going to be standing there in front of all those people, her adoring fans. And if she wants to, she can tell them, go vote on November 5th and don't you dare vote for Donald Trump. And I actually think that that's something that they need to be concerned about. And then there's the whole, is she going to go to Pennsylvania, her home state, and throw a concert with Josh Shapiro? You know, I don't think that she is. But if she does, that could actually be really bad for the Trump campaign, because do you know how many people would watch that?
Right. So, all right. I want to throw out there, and I have no commitment to this idea, that there could be a more direct effect, which is that the demographic group that Donald Trump polls well in is white people. The gender demographic in which he polls less well is women. And the demographic group in which the age demographic in which he does least well is young. The younger it gets, so now you're talking about like under 40 white women is the core of the Taylor Swift demographic. And how much influence does she need to have before? This demographic is huge. It's an enormous group of people. And it's part of, notwithstanding the fact that they're young and female, it's part of the demographic that is the core of his political strength, which is white people. So if you're, talking about these suburban and rural counties where Donald Trump just has to clean up among white people in order to win, and you say, let's demoralize, make less likely to vote for you and more likely to vote for the other side some relatively small percentage of this group, but like that's a little bit like it's not like kicking the base in the face, but it's like telling a base demographic, I hate one of your cultural icons. And so I'm just wondering if we might be understating the impact, because this demographic is a white demographic, and Donald Trump just can't afford. He can afford to be offensive to Black people because so few of them are percentage-wise going to vote for him anyway. He can afford, to a lesser extent, to be offensive to minority groups, but he cannot afford to be offensive to white people. And so I wonder if there's a more direct political effect, which is, a whole lot of young white women aren't into him.
I mean, potentially. I don't know. I feel like I need to look more at the studies around celebrity endorsements. But what I will say, though, is that if there's an exception to celebrity endorsement theory in political science, it probably would be Taylor Swift. I jokingly, before all of this news started happening, would say, I would say, I'm being so serious when I say that Taylor Swift could swing this election. And it's more of an intuition as opposed to having any kind of real evidence of that. But it actually, I think, is a big deal. And the ways in which it's a big deal, I'm just not entirely sure yet.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, so she is more supported, Harris is more supported by than Trump among older and younger voters. And she has a smaller She has a significant edge among voters from 18 to 34. And white women only back her by 6 points. So that, basically you have the race and the gender effects canceling each other out. It seems to me if Taylor Swift gives a reason for that number to move, you don't have to move that number much, the white women number, before the race becomes unwinnable for Trump.
Right. I mean, also keep in mind, Taylor Swift is a Pennsylvania roots kind of gal. And
right.
A lot of people know that. And that is a very important state for Kamala Harris to win. But again, I do think that it's kind of like, what's she going to do with this? Will it just be this one Instagram post and then that's it? It is really, really a bad idea for Donald Trump to come after her, because if there's anything I know about Taylor Swift, this is like the exact kind of thing that will make her, like, maybe if she was gonna not do something before, like, this would be the kind of thing that would make her just like, oh, I'm going to like burn the whole thing down and I'm going to come after you and show you what Taylor Swift like can do. Like, you know what I mean? Because she's I think maybe one of the reasons she wouldn't do that is because of what I said about her. She's going back on tour, and especially with the threats to her concert in Vienna, it's a complicated time for her to be making more political statements or doing a lot of political activism. But
when does the tour end?
I think that it ends. I want to say that her U.S. dates are done like right before the election, like November 2nd or something, and then the weekend before, and then her international dates continue. She has Canadian dates, I think, after the election.
Interesting. Well, the security component is an interesting one, and I hadn't thought of it. That's actually a legitimate reason for her to think about going slow beyond what she's already done.
Keep in mind too, it's not just, it's like Travis Kelce has a football season that he's in where hundreds of that,
right. It's not just their security that's at issue. It's the issue of hundreds of thousands of people who attend these concerts.
I'm actually going to a potentially Taylor Swift game on Sunday. I'm going to the Falcons game in Atlanta, and she might be there because they're playing the Chiefs.
And are you one of the people who was never interested in football before there started being Taylor Swift games?
You know me, I'm not into football at all. My dad, it was so funny because last year when I got really into the Chiefs, it was like one night my mom and I were in the living room watching the Chiefs game, and my dad was in the other room watching a movie, whereas usually it's the other way around where we don't want to watch football. And so we're in the other room watching a movie and he's in his like little den watching.
When you go to a game on Sunday, are you going to watch a football game, or are you going to see if you can catch a glimpse of Taylor Swift?
Oh no, I'm going to see if I can catch a glimpse of Taylor Swift for sure. I'm pretty sure that's why my sisters are going too. But my dad is going because he's a Falcons fan and he wants to see the game.
All right, so let's just while we're in super honesty mode here, did you ever believe that in the Great American Divorce that the left would get the NFL?
The Great American Divorce?
In which we become two separate cultures that hate each other, that the NFL would go with Hollywood and,
no, the NFL would definitely not. No.
The NFL was part of the right until Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah, until Taylor, but that's one of the things is like, this is the other thing that I found so weird, where all of the people who got so mad that she was being just shown at the football games. Like, I think that's another good example of like your kind of you being interested in this idea of like, what is it about Taylor Swift that makes people so mad?
That it drives people insane.
It's like it's really interesting because as someone who's been following her and been a fan, and also sometimes been aggravated and like kind of like, oh, Taylor, what are you doing? But all through it all, you know, I've been a fan, but also I've seen the way people get about this person or this persona, and it's so odd because I really don't know what the answer is.
On that question, we are going to leave it there. Anna Bauer, thanks for joining us. We're gonna bring you back every time there's a Taylor Swift cultural political event, because you're our official Taylor Swift correspondent now. And we will be back tomorrow with one of my favorite new characters in my life, the great Holly Berkeley Fletcher, who will be here to talk about whatever's on her mind. See you guys then. Obviously share this with everybody you've ever met.